A single moment can unravel a lifetime of careful stitching. 1 second you're admiring the tapestry you've woven, the love, the sacrifices, the quiet compromises, and the next, a single, brutal thread is pulled, and the whole picture disintegrates. That moment, for me, came not in a dark alley or a tense private meeting, but under the glittering chandeliers of my son's wedding to the saccharine melody of a string quartet. It was the day my daughter-in-law, Ilara, decided the final piece of my life belonged to her, and she was willing to steal it in front of 200 witnesses. The air in the grand ballroom was thick with the scent of gardenias and old money. I stood near the back, a simple silhouette against a backdrop of obscene wealth, feeling the weight of the single pearl necklace I wore, a modest heirloom from my own mother that felt like a secret rebellion against the diamond-dripping crowd. My son Liam looked like a prince from a storybook, his smile wide but strained, his eyes constantly seeking approval from his new bride. And Ilara was a vision. A statuesque blonde in a gown that cost more than my first house, she moved with the unshakable confidence of someone who has never been told no. I had tried to love her for Liam's sake, but her politeness was a thin veneer over a core of glacial calculation. She saw my relationship with Liam not as a bond, but as a rival corporation to be acquired or dismantled. The toast was the catalyst. Liam, his voice thick with emotion, spoke of resilience. "My mother," he said, his gaze finding me, "taught me that true strength isn't about what you have, but what you can build from nothing." She worked 3 jobs to keep a roof over our heads, to give me the opportunities that led me here to this moment, with the love of my life. My heart swelled, tears pricking my eyes. He remembered, he understood. But as he raised his glass, Ilara's perfectly sculpted smile tightened. I saw the flicker in her eyes, the swift recalculation. She whispered something to him, a sharp, urgent hiss lost under the applause. He paled and shook his head slightly, but her grip on his arm was vice-like. She took the microphone. "What a beautiful sentiment, my love," she purred, her voice dripping over the crowd. "And it's so true. Building from nothing is a noble struggle, but the next chapter is about building a legacy." She turned her dazzling, predatory smile directly to me. "Margaret, Liam told me all about that wonderful little apartment you have, the one with the view of the park. It's so cozy. But let's be practical. A 2-bedroom in that neighborhood is a waste for one person." A cold dread trickled down my spine. The room seemed to hush, waiting. "As a wedding gift to us," Ilara continued, her voice rising with false benevolence. "And as a way to truly become part of our new family, we'd be so honored if you'd hand over the keys tonight. We've found the perfect tenant, a corporate client of my father's, who will pay a fortune in rent. That money will be the seed for our future, for your future grandchildren. It's the perfect next step for you. We've even arranged a lovely room for you at the assisted living facility over on Elm Street. It's time for you to relax, Margaret. Just give me the keys." The audacity was breathtaking. She hadn't asked. She hadn't asked an eviction, a demotion to a rented room in a place smelling of disinfectant and despair, all wrapped in the language of a gift. My apartment wasn't just bricks and mortar, it was the home I bled for. It was where I rocked Liam to sleep, where I grieved his father, where every scuff on the floor held a memory. It was my sanctuary, my only true asset. Liam was staring at his shoes, a statue of shame and impotence. The 200 guests were a blur of silent, fascinated horror. "Ilara," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, cutting through the thick air, "that apartment is my home. It is not a gift to be given. The answer is no." Her smile vanished, replaced by a mask of icy fury. She strode toward me, the train of her gown slithering behind her like an angry serpent. "Don't be a selfish old woman," she spat, her voice a low, venomous whisper that only the first few rows could hear. "This for Liam. Give me the keys, now." "You will never set foot in my home," I said, each word measured and final. That's when it happened. Time seemed to slow. Her arm, adorned with diamond bracelets, swung through the air. The crack of her palm against my cheek was a gunshot in the stunned silence. The pain was sharp and hot, but it was nothing compared to the searing humiliation. I stumbled back, my hand flying to my face, feeling the already rising heat. I looked at Liam. "My son!" He took a half step forward, his mouth agape, but a sharp glance from his new wife froze him in place. In that moment, I didn't just lose the respect of the crowd, I lost my son. A single tear I couldn't suppress traced a path through my powder. I looked at Ilara's triumphant glare, at Liam's averted eyes, and then at the sea of silent, complicit faces. Without a word, I turned. I walked out of the ballroom, my head held high, the sound of my heels on the marble floor the only echo in the profound quiet. I didn't run. I walked with the dignity of a queen, leaving a court that had proven itself unworthy. Outside, the cool night air was a balm. I leaned against the cold stone of the building, my whole body trembling. The facade crumbled. Sobs racked my chest, tears of a pain so deep it felt ancestral, but grief quickly hardened into a cold, sharp resolve. They thought I was a helpless old woman. They thought my power resided in a set of keys. They had no idea who I really was. I pulled a small, ancient flip phone from my clutch, a relic everyone, including Liam, laughed at. I didn't use it for apps or the internet. I used it for one thing. A single, memorized number I had promised myself I would only dial in absolute extremity. My finger, shaking, pressed the buttons. It rang twice. A voice, deep and graveled with age, yet unmistakably authoritative, answered. "This is Al." "It's Maggie," I said, my voice raw. "The contingency we spoke about, the one involving Liam, it's time. The Grand Legacy Ballroom, 30 minutes. There was a pause on the other end. "Understood." The line went dead. For the next half hour, I sat on a stone bench in the garden, watching the lights of the ballroom. The music had started again, a feeble attempt to resume the celebration. I could picture the scene inside. Ilara playing the wounded party, justifying her actions, Liam wrestling with his guilt, the guests gossiping in hushed, excited tones. They believed the drama was over. They had no idea the main act was just arriving. At the 29-minute mark, I walked back inside. I didn't slink in. I entered as if I owned the very air they breathed. I stood at the back again, a silent observer. The dancing had stopped. A nervous energy filled the room. And then the massive oak doors at the front of the hall swung open. A man stood there. He wasn't tall, but he commanded space. He was in his late 70s, dressed in an impeccably tailored navy suit that spoke of quiet, immense power, not loud wealth. His hair was silver, his face a roadmap of sharp intelligence and authority. He held a simple leather portfolio. A ripple of confusion went through the crowd. Who was this old man? But I watched Ilara's father, a pompous man named Robert who had made his fortune in commercial real estate. His face drained of all color, he stood up so quickly his chair screeched back. He knew! And then Liam saw him. My son's eyes widened in disbelief, then darted to me, a dawning, horrifying comprehension on his face. "Alistair Croft?" Robert stammered, his voice trembling. What are you doing here?" The name Croft acted like a spell. A hushed whisper swept through the room. Croft. As in Croft Holdings, the empire that owned, among many other things, the entire corporate structure of Robert's company and half the city's prime real estate. The men who operated from the shadows, a legend rarely seen. Alistair ignored him. His eyes scanned the room until they found me. He gave me a slight, almost imperceptible nod. Then he walked purposefully down the center aisle, directly toward the bridal table. He stopped before a terrified Liam and a bewildered, angry Ilara. "Liam," Alistair said, his voice calm but carrying to every corner. "The last time I saw you, you were 6 years old, trying to build a fortress out of my law books." He then turned his gaze to Ilara. "You must be the young woman who just assaulted my client." "Client? What is this?" Ilara snapped, though her bravado was cracking. Alistair placed the leather portfolio on the table and opened it. "I am Margaret's attorney, but more importantly, I am the executor of the trust she established for you, Liam, 20 years ago." He pulled out a document. A trust funded entirely by the success of the startup tech company she co-founded and wisely sold before the market crash. A trust that, according to the terms I am holding, is voided upon any act of coercion, fraud, or undue influence against the grantor. Your mother." Liam looked like he'd been gut-punched. "Mom? A co-founder? Of what?" "Of Ethelgard Systems," Alistair said coolly. "You might know it now as the backbone of most global financial networks. The apartment Ilara so crassly demanded was never your mother's only asset. It was simply the only one she kept for sentimental reasons. The trust, Liam, was worth just over $47 million. The gasp from the crowd was collective. Ilara's hand flew to her mouth. Her father sank back into his chair, looking ill. "The triggering event is clear," Alistair continued, his voice like steel. "A public attempt to seize her property, culminating in physical assault, witnessed by 200 people. The trust is null and void, effective immediately. All assets revert to Margaret." He turned to me. "Margaret? Your instructions?" Every eye in the room was on me. The power had not just shifted, it had been utterly inverted. I looked at my son. The little boy I had read stories to, the young man I had sacrificed everything for. His face was a mask of utter devastation. He wasn't crying for the money. He was crying because he finally saw the magnitude of what he had allowed to happen, the depth of the love and respect he had betrayed. "The trust is gone, Liam," I said, my voice clear and calm, "but my love for you was never in it. That was a gift you had to earn every day through respect and kindness. You chose differently today." I then looked at Ilara, whose beautiful face was now twisted with rage and loss. "You wanted a key to my world, Ilara. You just never knew how big that world was, or that the only key you needed was basic human decency. You have neither." I turned to Alistair. "I'm ready to go." As I walked out, arm in arm with the most powerful man in the city, I didn't look back. The sound that followed me wasn't the polite applause of a wedding, but the silent, crushing weight of consequences. The pearl on my necklace felt cool against my skin, a small, hard testament to the quiet strength that had just, finally, spoken its name. The following days were a study in silence. My phone remained dark. No calls from Liam, no frantic apologies, only a void where my son used to be. The newspapers, the society blogs were curiously mute. The Croft name ensured that certain scandals were buried deep, a discretion money could indeed buy. I spent my time in my apartment, the very place they had tried to take, and found a strange peace in its familiar walls. It was no longer just a home. It was a fortress I had successfully defended. A week after the wedding, a courier delivered a thick manila envelope. Inside were the complete transfer documents for the trust assets, now solely in my name. Paperwork for investment portfolios, offshore accounts, and property holdings I hadn't looked at in years. There was also a single, handwritten note from Alistair on his heavy, cream-laid stationery. "The first move has been made. The board is yours, awaiting your next instruction. A.C." I knew what he meant. This wasn't just about reclaiming money. It was about reclaiming a life I had deliberately put on hold. The life of Margaret Ellison, co-founder of Ethelgard. I had stepped away from that world to be a full-time mother, to give Liam the stability I never had. I had let the business identity fade, content to be just mom. Now that identity was back, and it demanded to be worn again. The first order of business was Robert, Ilara's father. His company, a sprawling but deeply leveraged real estate firm, had been a minor, troublesome investment in my portfolio for years. Alistair had kept it for sentimental reasons, a relic of an old friendship with Robert's father that had long since soured. Now, with the attempted theft of my home and the assault by his daughter, sentiment was extinct. I placed a call to Alistair. "Initiate the hostile takeover of Thornfield Properties," I said, my voice devoid of the tremor that had been there a week before. "Use the Luxembourg Holding Company. I want it done quickly and quietly." "And Alistair?" "I want Robert removed from the board without a severance package. He can retire to contemplate his daughter's ambition." It took 3 days. The financial machinery Alistair commanded was ruthless and efficient. Robert's company, built on a foundation of debt and arrogance, crumbled under the weight of a perfectly executed financial assault. I saw his photograph in the business section, being escorted from his office building, his face ashen. There was no mention of the wedding, only vague references to aggressive market forces. The consequence had been delivered, precise and surgical. A part of me waited for the fallout, for Liam to storm through my door, accusing me of destroying his new family. But the storm never came. Instead, a letter arrived. It was on cheap stationery. The handwriting I knew so well was shaky. "Mom, I don't know how to start this. I have no right to ask you to read it. I've been staying in a hotel. Ilara left 2 days ago. She said I was a failure, that I had ruined everything. She wasn't talking about our marriage. She was talking about the money." I have no excuses. I stood there and I let it happen. I saw her slap you and I did nothing. The shame is a physical pain, worse than anything I've ever felt. I thought I was protecting the future I thought I wanted, but I was just a coward. I betrayed you, the person who sacrificed everything for me. I thought your strength was just about enduring hardship. I never understood that it was about integrity. I failed the most important test of my life. I don't care about the money. I care that I lost you. I know I can't ever get your trust back. But if there is any way, any path at all to someday earning a fraction of your respect, I will spend the rest of my life trying to find it. I am so sorry. Liam. I read the letter 3 times. The anger I had nurtured like a protective shield began to soften at the edges. This wasn't the plea of a greedy son. It was the confession of a broken man who had finally seen the truth. He wasn't crying over $47 million. He was crying over 47 million moments of love he had betrayed. I didn't reply immediately. He needed to sit in that hotel room to fully absorb the consequences of his inaction. I needed to decide what kind of mother I would be now, the one who cut her losses, or the one who understood that some bonds, however strained, were worth the painful work of mending. A month after the wedding, I asked Alistair to arrange a meeting, not at my apartment and not at his sterile office. I chose a neutral place, a quiet corner of the public park my apartment overlooked. I arrived first, sitting on a bench, watching the ducks on the pond. I saw him approach, looking thinner, older. The prince from the storybook was gone, replaced by a humbled man. He sat down beside me, not daring to look me in the eye. The silence stretched between us, filled with the ghosts of the wedding and every good moment that had come before it. "Thank you for coming," I said finally. He nodded, his throat working. "Thank you for asking." "I read your letter." He finally looked at me, his eyes red-rimmed. I meant every word. "I know you did," I said. "The trust is gone, Liam. That chapter is closed. It was a fail-safe, not a prize. I created it to ensure you would never be motivated by my money, only by your own character. It served its purpose in the most brutal way possible." "What happens now?" he whispered. "Now," I said, turning to face him fully, "we see if we can build something new. It won't be what it was. That innocence is gone. It will be something more honest, perhaps. It starts with you getting a job, on your own merits. It starts with you building a life you can be proud of, without Ilara, without my shadow, without any expectation of an inheritance." He swallowed hard. "And you?" I said, a faint smile touching my lips for the first time in weeks. "I'm going back to work. Ethelgard needs a new direction. It seems I have a knack for executing hostile takeovers." A genuine, watery smile broke through his misery. "You always were the strongest person I knew." "We'll see," I said. "Strength isn't about not getting hit, Liam. It's about getting back up. And it's about knowing when to offer a hand to the person who watched you fall." I stood up, leaving him on the bench with his thoughts. I didn't offer a hug or a word of forgiveness. That would come later, if it came at all. But I had offered a possibility, a single fragile thread. It was a start. The pearl felt cool against my skin, no longer just a relic of the past, but a touchstone for a future I would now design entirely for myself. The tapestry was frayed, but the loom was still mine.